So you talked a little bit about investment coming from industry as well as from regulators. And so maybe we can move into the regulatory responsibility to drive the green transition. So Europe is a first mover in driving global trade from the EU emissions trading schemes as well system, price on polluting, the Renewable Energy Directive, which is a legal framework for the transition to green fuels. So what responsibility do you think regulators and politicians have to help drive these global regulations? I would like to be specific, if you guys can, and what are you going to focus on to achieve these goals?
No, I think definitely, and I was always the kind of person who, probably even from the time I together with Connie Hedegaard, you wouldn't know her, but some people here in the room would know that she was actually a Danish commissioner talking about all the subjects that we're sitting with today, geopolitics, climate change, and so on and so forth. And we met with the CEO of GE. And he said, you know what, guys, this is all simple. Just make sure that we have a level playing field. Just make sure that when we compete, know the borders, know where to go, know that this is the direction. And I will never forget that. So for me, that is the role of the regulator, and we should take it on board. We should not say, oh, no, too many rules. Might be areas where it's been overdone. No problem. But we need to set the rules of the game to make sure that you guys have a level playing field and a comfortable playing field where you can actually attract investors and that they know this is not going to change, from one year to the other, because nobody wants to go there if the rules are changed continuously. So that would be my role, to say we make the set of rules. We do that, of course, after listening and understanding what are the perspectives of this. Then we set the rules. I personally want to end up in the ITRA area to use what I can bring into the family from my business experience.
Thank you. Henrik, you had raised your finger first.
Yeah, thank you. I think main problem is implementation. There are a lot of initiatives in the EU that haven't been implemented, and I think implementation of existing initiatives would be extremely important because we have a lot of new initiatives. But unfortunately, the way the EU works, you sometimes don't really wait for the implementation, you just move on to new initiatives. But I think implementing what's already in place is really, really important, because in spite of the fact that some people might want the EU to do more, I personally believe that what the EU has already done is quite ambitious and it needs to be implemented.
Thank you. Sorry, Magnus?
Yeah, so just to translate, what Henrik means is no more higher ambitions. I mean, that is what I've been hearing for Henrik and for the right party.
I think you should tell about the politics of the Social Democrats, and I will tell about the politics of the Liberal Alliance.
I will, Henrik.
Thank you. So what is your policy?
So let's be specific. First of all, we need a carbon tax in Denmark. Then we need a carbon tax in Europe. We need higher prices on emissions, which is in the carbon trading system. We need a carbon tax on the agricultural sector. We need to phase out fossil fuels faster. We would like that there would be a complete stop on fossil fuel transportation registration by 2030.
And you have a majority to do all that. Wonderful. That's what I was going to hear you tell about. Where is your majority for that?
You just asked me to tell about my policies. Can I actually tell about my politics?
Yeah, but I would like to hear about. I would like to hear about where is your majority for your suggestions.
Well, I mean, it depends on whether or not the European Parliament.
Yeah, but you are not the majority.
The European Parliament will be constituted of. Henrik, can I please finish my sentences?
If you promise not to interrupt me any further, I will not interrupt you.
Thank you both.
Did I actually interrupt? Like, I don't think I did. Anyway, just final comment.
Yes, thank you.
So, I think that we will, over the next 5 years in Europe, one major issue will be the green independence, or actually, what can you say, to be able to compete in an environment where the rules of competing have been changed. So you have China, you have the US, they're basically emptying out their state coffins for money and making a race on whether or not they can subsidize their green energy transition the most. You have the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, and China haven't been playing by the rules for, I don't know, decades. And me and Henrik, we actually visited a company in Jutland. We can tell you the same story for a few days ago. So Europe need to wake up to that, and we are running on a platform saying that we need to generate some revenue in order to invest in the green sector, and we are suggesting that you generate that revenue by making a small tax on financial transactions. Every time you trade equities or derivatives or different things on the stock exchange, there will be a small transaction fee, and that revenue will be channeled into some kind of green support mechanism. That will be probably in the vicinity of a 400 million euro, which is the equivalent of what we actually spend on the agricultural sector in Europe now, 1/3 of the entire budget. So that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I'm not saying that I can magically make that happen tomorrow. I mean, that will be a negotiating, a compromise between political parties. But I'm running on a social democratic platform, and I'm very eager to hear what the liberal platform is then, Henrik.
Thank you. Actually, Stine had a quick comment, and yes, Rasmus hasn't had his in yet.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to make sure that you understand that this conversation between the two gentlemen was actually probably the most interesting conversation. Because if you vote liberal, but with a green mandate on the back also, you vote for the Renew parties, and I'll even include my colleagues there. If you vote for the EPP side, you will have less ambitions. I'm sorry, but this is the case, and this is why people get upset in this debate. So we will never shy away from the high level of ambitions. We know well that there's a lot to be delivered on what to do, specifically, but we will never ever leave the ambitions on the green side, and that is being very liberal in the way we think businesses, the way that we think the Danish position is wonderful, and why should we not take that position in Europe and in the world?
Thank you. Can I give Henrik just a chance to have a rebuttal, and then we'll go to Rasmus. Thank you so much.
Stine, I have told you numerous times that President Macron, who is the spiritual leader of Renew Europe, has ordered all green initiatives on hold until after the French election. So it's not the EPP that's the problem, it's Macron's faction in the European Parliament, which is the one that you are seeking admission to. Macron is the one who asked to put everything on hold. The other thing is, we have to discuss where you're going to find a majority for your suggestions. Because sometimes we are talking endangered species, and I think birds in the bush are not an endangered species, and what you're talking about are birds in the bush. I mean, these are just ideas you have. So the election is less than 3 weeks away. But I would be really, really curious to hear how you will find a majority for your suggestions, or what you will settle for. Who will you make a deal with, and what will you settle for? Can't we hear a little bit about that?
Yes, but can I have Rasmus? Do you want to chime in here?
Yes, I think it would be good to hear from a Green Party as well.
Might be a good idea.
The big problem as we see it now with the European legislation, what has been made in the last 5 years, is actually, even if everything is implemented, we are not even close to living up to the Paris Agreement. We're not even close to living up to the Montreal Protocol on nature and biodiversity. So if we really look at what EPP is saying, and Renew with Macron to take a pause in legislation, this is going to go bad. And that's why I talk about high ambitions, higher targets, and more action. We need to set up the new 2040 targets very soon in EU. And of course, we need to move forward the climate neutrality from 2050 to 2040. That also have an impact on your business. We need to set a very firm plan on phasing out all the fossil fuels. I mean, gas first, coal first, then gas, and then fossil fuels. So we need to make these plans, and that's on EU level. We are doing that. Then we can then go back to the governments, and I'm pointing at my two colleagues here from government parties, because then from the Parliament we need to push the Commission all the time to push the member state to live up to the legislation
Of
we've
course.
made. And we have seen a government now in place for 1.5 years not living up to anything close to actually doing something about the nature crisis we have in Denmark, not living up to the climate targets we've set up. So this is first of all, if we don't have the right targets, we don't have the right ambitions, the legislation's not going to follow. And that's going to be bad for businesses, because if we set out the plans, I know that you can live up to that and you can find the solutions.
Fantastic. I think there is more to say on this, but it actually segues into the next section, which I believe will be what you guys want to talk about.